Okay, good afternoon to you all. You're all welcome to this afternoon's class. Please, if you can hear me, raise your hand up. Okay, so yeah, I don't think there are issues with hearing. Majority of you can hear me. All right, so today we are going to discuss the other side of the market, which is the supply side. All right, so what we did in our last lecture was to look at the demand side. So we discussed extensively the demand side of the market. So we look at what demand is, the law of demand, the factors that influences demand, and then the distinction between market demand and then individual demand. We also looked at how the change in the factors that influence demand um, affect demand, right? So we distinguish between a change in quantity demanded and also a change in demand. Right? So these are the things that we discussed last week. So this week we would be sorry, not last week, but our last lecture. So now we would be I don't know why some people are still entering the class and is asking me to admit them, but I have actually disabled the feature of waiting room. So I don't know why. Let me check again. So I have not enabled waiting room. So I don't know why I'm being asked to admit some students. Okay, so please, all those who have their hands up, lower it. Lower your hand. All right, so let's continue. So like I said, today we'll be looking at the supply side of the market. All right. Now, the good thing is that we have done the demand side, and therefore treating the supply side would be easier and even faster as well. So the same things that we did for the demand side, we are going to do same for the supply side. So we would first of all look at what supply is, the law of supply as we have the law of demand. We distinguish between individual supply and the market supply, and then also look at the factors that influences supply apart from the price of a commodity and how a change in these factors affects supply, i.e. the distinction between quantity or change in quantity supply and then a change in supply, right? And when we finish with that, we will now combine the two sides of the market, that is the demand side and then the supply side. And we will use that to determine the equilibrium price and quantity. In other words, how the prices of the items that we see out there are determined. And I've been making the point that they are determined by the interaction of demand and supply in the market. Right. So once we are done with that, we'll look at some effects of some shocks in the market. So what are the factors or the things that cause prices to change in the market? And of course, they are actually the forces of demand and supply in a free market system. So let's start with supply. What supply is. So just as we defined demand to be the quantities of a good or a service that consumers are willing and able to buy at various prices within a period of time. Supply is the quantities of a good or a service that producers or sellers are willing and able to sell on the market at various prices within a specified period of time. So the definition for supply and demand quite similar. It's just that in the case of supply, we are looking at the producers or the sellers of the commodities that we see out there in our various markets. So in defining it, just as we did in the case of demand, there are some key elements of the definition that has to be made clear. One of them is the willingness. So the producer should be willing, and the producer should also have the ability to supply. Right? He should have the ability, he or she should have the ability to supply, and that's in other words the capacity to supply. Supply is at various prices. So we are looking at the quantities that would be supplied at various prices. And then also, just as in the case of demand, which is for a period, supply is also time bound, is for a period. So we would say that supply for an hour, supply for a day, or supply for a month or a year, right? So the definition for supply is straightforward given that we have already defined demand. So based on the definition, one major factor that influences supply is the price of the commodity. Same like the demand, right? So the price of the commodity. So our focus will be on the relationship between quantity supply and then the price of the commodity. And in that respect, we have what we call the law of supply, just as we have the law of demand. Right. So what does the law says? All things being equal. So just as we made this assumption in the case of demand, this assumption is also being made in the case of supply. So all things being equal, to take care of the fact that there are so many factors that influence the supply, but we are holding all those factors constant except the price of the good. So that's how come we have the all things being equal assumption. So all things being equal, the higher the price of a product, the higher the quantity supply to the market. And then the lower the price of the product, the lower the quantity supply to the market. Right. So this law suggests that there is a positive relationship between the price of a product and then the quantity supply of that product to the market. And this makes intuitive sense because the higher the price, the more profit producers are likely to make, given that cost remains the same. So therefore, if price increases, they have the motivation or the incentive to supply more of the products to the market. Okay, but and the reverse is also the case. When price is lower, we do not expect to see producers or sellers supply more of that quantity to the market. Right, so that is basically what the law of supply says. So what I want you to pick from this is that there is a direct relationship, or a positive relationship between the price of a product and then the quantity supplied of that product to the market. Okay. No, just as in the case of demand, where we represent the demand or the law of demand in three ways. The same way the law of supply can also be represented in three ways. We can represent it with a supply schedule. We can also use a supply curve, or we can use a supply function, right? So let's quickly look at what these forms of representing the supply law or the law of supply is. It's quite similar to the case of demand. So the supply schedule is just a table that has two columns. One is capturing or measuring price of the product, and then the second column is measuring the quantity supply of the product. So you observe the trends in the data, and you can clearly say that at higher prices, quantity supplied is high, and at lower prices, quantity supply is low. So if you see your screen, the table to the left of your screen is a supply schedule. So it is just explaining, or it explains the relationship between the price of a good and then the quantity supply of that good. So on the table, you clearly see that at lower prices, low quantities are supplied, and at higher prices, higher quantity are supplied to the market. So that is the supply schedule. Right. Then we have the supply curve. So you again, as I said in the case of demand, in drawing the demand curve, we put price on the vertical axis and quantities demanded on the horizontal axis. In the case of supply, it's also the same. Price of the quantity, or sorry, price of the product is always put on the vertical axis, whilst the quantity supplied is always put on the horizontal axis, right? So if you plot the data in the schedule on the price quantity supply quadrant, the resulting curve is the supply curve. And it is an upward sloping curve. In other words, it slopes upward from left to right. Right. So on your screen, the blue line you see on your screen is the supply curve. Now, how does this explain the law of supply? It explains the law of supply by the upward nature of the curve. So the curve rises from, or I mean, it's slopes from slope upward from left to right, indicating that anytime the variable on the vertical axis increases, the variable on the horizontal axis also increases. So that gives us the direct or the positive relationship between quantity supplied and then the price of the items sold in the market. Right. So the curve you see on your screen is the supply curve. Okay. And then the last one is the supply function. So it works the same way as the demand function. So it can be expressed in terms of P or in terms of quantity supplied. So the first equation is in terms of P, where P is the dependent variable, right? And then the second one is in terms of quantity supplied, where quantity supplied is a dependent variable. So like I said earlier on in our previous class, if you're given one, you can find the other. So the first one again is the inverse supply function, and then the second one is a direct supply function. So whichever one that is given to you, you can work with it. If you are given the inverse supply function, you should be able to work with it. If you are given the direct supply function too, you should be able to work with it. Now, the explanations of the components of the supply functions are the same as in the case of the demand function. Now, one would ask, how does this supply function explains the law of supply? It is explained, I mean, it explains the law of supply by using the positive sign that we see on the in the supply function. So the positive sign there indicates that there is a positive relationship between the price of the product and the quantity supplied, right? The price of the product and then the quantity supplied. So if you pick the one that is expressed in terms of QX, for instance, the one in the equation shows the quantity supply when price is 0. So the one you see in the equation shows quantity supply when price is 0. And then the 2 in the equation shows the change in quantity supply when there is a unit change in price. In other words, that is the slope or the gradient of the supply function. Right? If we have quantity supply as the dependent variable and then price as the independent variable. Okay. Now I would switch to a whiteboard to provide a further explanation on this, just as I did in the case of demand. But I do have some, I have a hand up and also some message in my text. So I want to check what is there. So let me go to the message. Some students say that people are having challenges joining. Okay, I don't know what's happening. All right, you are coming, we'll see. And then I have Joshua. Joshua, your hand is up. You can go ahead, Joshua.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, please, with the direct supply function that is given on the board,
Yeah.
on the screen, sorry. When you fix the, when I try to fix the quantities inside, it didn't match up to what was given to us on the board.
When you try to do what, please, Joshua?
When I try to fix in the functions, as in the numbers,
yeah,
the prices inside, especially for the direct supply, I've not checked for the indirect.
What do? You say when you fix them, what happens?
I didn't get the answers. That is the original supply. What is being provided on the table. For instance, for the A, when I fix price, 2 cedis.
When you fix price, what?
That is 4. Plus the 1.
No, but
when you fix price,
no.
2 cedis. The 2.
Joshua, what you have to be careful here is that I haven't checked it, but it doesn't mean this schedule might not be necessarily giving you these equations. You get what I mean? Hello, Joshua.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that the schedule you have here is not necessarily the schedule that gives these equations. Right? The schedule is just to help you, draw it. But in any case, okay, so I was going to make this point. I don't know if you have looked at it. Now, if you pick this equation, which is the Qx equal to 1 plus 2p, right? If you are making p the subject in that, then this 0.5 here should be negative. So there's a typo there that I was going to correct. Do you get it?
Yes, I get it, sir.
So if that is the reason why you are not getting it, you are not getting the if you substitute this. But I'm saying that given this, so if you pick this equation qx equal to 1 plus 2p, if you make p the subject here, this 0.5 here should be negative. So if you like, work with that and see if it will give you this. But I don't think it is this schedule that was used to obtain this equation. Right? So you can try. Just make this one negative.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So if you pick this 3 and let's see. So if price quantity supply is 3, right? And this is negative. So if you put 3 here, 0.5 times 3 will give you 1.5. And then plus minus 0.5. That should give you, what do you call it? That should give you 1. Another option will be that in most cases,
Yes, sir.
this 1, 2 can be negative. Right? This 1, 2 can be negative. If you make the 1 negative, work with that 2 and see. But
Sir,
I mean, I don't
please,
think.
why will it be negative?
Sorry?
Sir, please, I wanted to know why it will be negative.
Okay, so the 1, in most cases, we are saying that if price is 0, right, the producer should not supply a positive
Yes, sir.
figure. Right? If price is 0, he should not supply a positive figure. This is pure mathematics. I don't want to go there. I just want you to understand the basis. So this is not a math class. But if the why this will be 1 will be negative if you want. If 1 as it stands here, if you make p the subject, this will be minus 0.5. But originally, the supply function is stated as qx equal to minus c plus 2, I mean maybe dp, for instance. So this 1 in the original specification should be minus 1, right? And then you can work with that.
Oh, okay.
So if this is minus 1,
Yes, sir.
I'm sure it will come out the way you want it. Right? So if this is minus 1, then of course this will be positive, right? So if you have this as 0.5
Yes, it will be.
times 3, that gives you 1.5. And then plus the 0.5, that gives you a price of 2. Do you get it?
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's right.
I don't want to do
Yes, I
all
get it,
those
sir.
math. That's why I've been silent on that. But original specification for this should be minus 1 here. Okay. I have a lot of messages here. So the reason why, so somebody, Samuel, you're asking why. So the positive there as for the supply where you have P equal to that is correct. But to get that positive, the supply function, the one with qx, the 1 has to be minus 1. Right? The 1 has to be minus 1 in order to get the equation that you have here. Right? So this is what I'm saying. Let me just switch to the whiteboard to explain this further. Okay, so now I think you are getting it now. So, but let me just switch to a whiteboard. So stop sharing this, and then I'll share the whiteboard. So the equation is, if you have this, is equal to 1 plus 2p. If you make p the subject here, right? Then you will have, if I send 1 here, I'll have, or let me just say that I have QX minus 1 is equal to 2P. So therefore, P will be equal to 1 over 2 QX minus 1 over 2. So if you simplify it, that is why you have the, so this should be negative 0.5 plus 0.5 QX, okay? I'm saying that if this is the supply function you are working with, this should have been the supply function in terms of P. But I'm saying that supply function originally, this should be negative, right? The 1 should be negative. So if 1 is negative, then of course you would have what you have there, which is 0.5 plus 0.5 QX. Okay, so if you work with this, you should get. So I understand what Joshua, if Joshua works with the second one, which is QX, you will not get the answers that you have there because the 1 is not minus there. So I hope it makes sense to you now, Joshua. Okay. So for those who are not able to join, I think the way to go is to log on. I have to end this one and then we log on again. That's the only way we can get them to join. Right? So that means that you would have to, the recordings here will be 2. Okay, so I don't know why this thing happens. Okay, so I am ending this class now and then I'll re-log on. Right, I'll start again for people in order to get those who are not able to join to join. So I am doing that now.